Hi, ladies. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be back on. Woo, we have a good session today. Yesterday, I want to apologize. Definitely had plans to go live with Shay. It was going to be amazing. But again, due to my error, something with my scheduling kind of got tweaked. So we are going to reschedule that. That will be happening next week. So trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be so, so good and juicy. But you'll just have to wait. So hold on to the excitement. So now we have my beautiful guest, Marta, will be joining us. And Marta, if that is you, I just need you to, as always, just ask to join, and then I will go ahead and bring you up and we'll have you on. If that's not Marta, feel free to say hi, whoever is on today. Super excited to have you all here and just bring this goddess session to life because I truly, I'm really loving the way that these are all flowing. Because what they're doing is they're really allowing us to have really unique conversations that I'm not really seeing anywhere else. So this is definitely her. Okay, we're adding her. Marta's coming. I'm so excited. Yay, we're getting this down pat better and better. Hi.
Hey.
How are you? Oh my gosh, we got the red going. You've got the red dress. I've got the red lip.
Yes, and there might be some roosters in the background because I'm outside in Mexico. So hello.
So fun. Well, I love beautiful Mexico. Are you just traveling for vacation and fun, or is it for work or anything?
Well, it's worth work and vacation. So Mexico is my 6 months home for every year.
Yeah. Oh, fun. Well, that's amazing. I think that's the definition of doing life right. But I'm so excited to have you on. Thank you for joining us today and taking time out of your vacation to be here. So I'm really excited. So I know that you do somatic therapy, you do a lot with like intuition, you talk a lot about the feminine and just really harnessing that power. And I love, your name, Wildflower, and everything. So I would just love for you to intro us in and just tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and kind of just, yeah, how you got involved in the work that you do now.
Okay, a little bit. Well, it's a little bit interesting, right? Because yes, I do work a lot with feminine energy, and I'm very passionate about bringing the feminine back into society as an equal. And interesting though, I also work a lot with masculine energy. So I equally work with male as with females. And often I also actually guide people in their masculine energy, which is the mental. But my passion to seeing like in the world is that we embrace all the energy that we have through our emotions. And this is also really how I see how we can deepen into ourselves and find more of who we truly are. So
Yeah.
for me, I see the emotions as messengers from the soul. I see it as activation of how we can just connect to, ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. I don't know if enough people really talk about the power of the masculine and femininity, or the feminine, and like bringing those worlds together and creating harmony with that. So, I guess, how would you explain the difference between masculine and feminine? Because I think it very much gets looked at as like men and women, but like we all have both, right? And when we understand how to tap into them, that's when we can really harness our true power of like our being. So, what's the difference, and how do you kind of bring both together in your work?
Mm, Beautiful introduction you did there. So well, for me, the masculine is the mental aspect. It's our capacity to, have a language together now.
Mm.
And the masculine is very goal oriented, gives structure, and it's more external focused. And then you have the feminine, which is the pure creativity. It's I was going to say intuition, but you can also have the male aspect of intuition. But like the deep knowing really comes from in our bodies, like intuition, which is like naturally just guide us. So the gut feeling is a real thing. So yeah, so for me the feminine is the emotional body. It's experiencing the world from the inside, so it's more internal focused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it can feel a little, I know from my own experience, sometimes it can feel difficult to know which is speaking to you, right? Because I think there's not enough practice in our world of understanding that. And I've said this a few times, but when we go through life and have experiences, we're not just like going through like a mind experience and our head experience. We're not just a floating head, right? We're also having a body experience at the same time. And there's a book called The Body Keeps Score. There's literally, you know, our body's having a whole experience. So how do you kind of tap into which one is speaking to you? Can you, I know from my own experience, I can feel it a little bit differently, but I think if you're not doing enough of the work internally, it's hard to know. So what are like, I guess, how do you know, and what are some ways women can just start tapping into the differences?
Well, that's, for instance, a self-pleasure. And when I say self-pleasure, I don't mean masturbation, but it can include genitalia touch or even masturbation. So self-pleasure is, I'm just going to first say, it's interesting how all these taboos around pleasure. So when I'm saying self-pleasure, people tend to be like, oh, you know, you're talking about masturbation, like orgasms, like, well, that's one of the things we can do to have pleasure with ourselves, but there's so many things. And if you think about the feminine, so the feminine energy just wants to be felt and seen and expressed. It's just this pure chaos of just, I feel what I feel and I just want to feel it. And so for me, like self-pleasure then, as in somatic experiencing, is really like a feminine moving meditation. So it's taking a dedicated time to just be with what's alive inside. So like, what's the sensations running through the body? What is the body speaking to you? So by taking the time, you know, everything from even just 15 minutes a day is great. But of course, I recommend 30 minutes and 40 minutes now and then. Yeah, just learning to listen within. And with this, we're practicing to listen to the body. So it becomes a practice. And after a while, it actually gets to be very more and more automatic. So when I'm talking to you now, I'm constantly feeling into my body. And I also notice my masculine is having a lot of fun with the birds going crazy around me. I don't know if you can hear that, but
Tiny bit, but not anything bad.
yeah, pretty loud here actually, just started. Yeah, so for patience, softness, because the inside voice, like the intuition and that is very, very soft. The mind is very clear, but the huge part of the mind being so clear is because that's what we are learned to cultivate in the world. You know, like we live in a world that is polarized in a very masculine, patriarchal, you know, capitalistic system. And it's like it focuses all the attention really on the brain and the mental aspect. So we just need patience to start to learn to tap into the body. After a while, like what I feel now is my body is very clear. Like she's constantly communicating with me. And what before would just be very subtle and can still be, but it's often so clear that I don't have any chance of just listening to her. And that's really beautiful.
Yeah, and that's just understanding like sometimes things are going to come in clear, and sometimes, you know, you're going to need to come, it's going to hit you later, but always giving space to just allow your body to speak. And then when you're meant to hear it, however it's speaking to you, like that's when it's going to happen, whenever it's meant to. So just understanding you're not always going to get the information right when you know, right when you think you want it. But at the same time, I love the idea of just like not always listening to get something out of your body, right? Because that like constant trying to force information, it can almost just be taxing and like prevent anything from coming through at all. So I really see a lot of benefit in just being more free flow, practicing like somatic dancing and really connecting with your body. But I just kind of want to take a step back a little bit, because you know a lot of these conversations that I'm having with women that connect with the body and dive into that space, like they'll say it can be self-pleasure, but it's in all these other things. So I almost feel like sometimes there's this fear of talking about the self-pleasure aspect. Like, why do you think it is still so taboo? You know, because I know more and more people are talking about like masturbation and connecting with yourself and being one with your body, but yet sometimes there's still that block. So why do you think it's a taboo? Why do you think women still feel like a little bit uncomfortable about this subject? And I'm not judging, because I can feel that way too, but from your perspective and your work, Like, what have you seen?
Yeah, beautiful. I love the question and reflection you brought into this. So first of all, what you're going to see is that often I look out in the air, and the reason why I do that is because I'm connecting into my body. So it's a little bit of, that's why I sometimes just look. um, so what wants to come alive in sharing this? Well, first of all, the more pleasure we have in our bodies, the more we will listen within, the more we will be in tune. And sexuality and sexual drive is one of the most powerful drives. It's almost trumps the need for water and food. That's why you see people being in some kind of a catastrophe and they survive, and 9 months later there's a baby. So the reproduction and that drive, desire is super strong. And when you suppress a person's body and when you suppress their sexuality, you have two extremely powerful tools to manipulate. So when you think about the current businesses around, the majority of them is actually based around people not being happy with themselves or their body, and then selling something that if you buy this, if you do that, if you do this workout, if you take this course, then you'll be finally happy. And sex is one of the things that's used the most in marketing. Like sex is used in pretty much everything. So when you shame this natural desire, you're actually making it like a carrot for people to think that, well, if I buy that suitcase, because you even see people sexualize a suitcase commercial, and it's like, is this? So the more you shame it, the more actually easy you can manipulate with sex. So it's actually about control. That's my perspective. And it can be maybe a bit triggering for people, but if you start to think about it like that and look around in society, it starts to be very obvious.
Yeah, I feel like what you just said just clicked with me in a different way because I never really thought about, like, I know both of those things, right? Like, I know that advertising and stuff, like, that's actually what I studied in school. And I know that it is overly sexualized, overly sexualized. But yet, so it is a power tool in a way for like people to create money and to like help. I hate to make it this conversation, like I don't want to bring men down, but it just almost is like the power struggle is like, let me use the tool of women's sexuality to bring more money and more into my pocket over here. But then at the same time, let me shame you and make you feel awkward and uncomfortable for talking about it in an empowering sense.
Yeah.
So like I know we know that sexualized like media, and I'm kind of taking this in a different way, but I know that we all know that's there. But I feel like that subconsciously is causing more issues than anybody is fully acknowledging within themselves. Like, yeah, we see it, and sometimes it makes us feel, it makes you feel not great. But the reason why is maybe because it's creating more of a gap to feel safe within yourself, because it's almost as if, and nobody has to claim this as the truth, this is just kind of what's coming up for me, is like maybe it feels unsafe because you're like, oh, if I connect with that, then that means that I'm dirty and greedy and using this as a tool instead of using this as a way to feel better within myself. So it's almost like this loop that we can't seem to win. So yeah, I guess anything else you want to share on that, because I could ask
Yeah.
you questions, but I'm like, what's coming up for you on that subject, and do you resonate with that? Like,
Yeah, I do. And what's coming up for me is that two things. So what you described in a lot of ways for me is like the Madonna whore complex, meaning that we've been polarized that either you're a mother and your wife and your wife potential, or you're whore. So that's a shaming aspect that's coming up. And sex has been made into this thing that sex is something you do for the man. It's something you do to catch him, to have a baby. And you see this so much in religion, it's like so deeply ingrained. And that's another way of the power, like getting control. And when we take that back, for instance, through self-pleasure and masturbation, that we don't need anyone to give us these beautiful orgasms. Like, for instance, I've been celibate. I've broken my celibacy now, recently, but I was celibate for a year and a half. And yeah. So, and it was a conscious choice to break it. So it wasn't like I just meant to do it. But for me, it was such a hugely important time to just be with my own body and realize all these amazing orgasms and all this pleasure I can find in just my own body. And by that, taking back, I have to be honest, I've always been a very sexual person. So I don't have, I guess I have in a lot of ways less shame than many when it comes to sexuality, but I still discover layers and layers of shame and conditioning like underneath. So it's been really, really powerful. And so, yeah, by taking back that sex is something I do because I enjoy it and I want it. That's like one of the things where you can, you know, it's a bonus, you know, we get more pleasure and we drop out of that kind of being controlled by the shaming. Um, because what I see is that in a lot of ways, it's not really necessarily about the men who is creating this sexualization, because also it's women, we're part of it. Because so the feminine, you can divide up into light feminine and dark feminine, and it can same with the masculine. So it's like archetype wheel. And when I say dark feminine, I'm not saying evil or bad. I'm just saying that it's an energy that's more external. It's more kind of power in the energy. And the dark feminine is where we find our creativity. It's where we have this emotional awareness. You know, women tend to naturally have more of the feminine, but not necessarily. And but if you bring that to the shadow aspects, it's actually manipulation. And one of the ways the dark feminine can manipulate, but as well the light feminine, is through sex, is using sex and using our bodies in order to gain control. So that's also to be aware of, is like, let's not just place everything on the man, because we are playing the game, you know, like just sitting here, you know, wearing, like showing my cleavage. So even though there's no men here, still it is playing on sexuality. So it's a little bit of just becoming aware. And I'm not saying that is bad to, look, I love dressing up sexy and I love, you know, putting on lingerie and doing these things. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's about being conscious of, am I doing this for my own sake? And do I have any kind of, am I trying to manipulate, or am I just wanting to just play with my sexuality, or I just get like a little bit to the purity of what's underneath the desire.
Oh my
I don't
gosh.
know if yeah.
There's so much good stuff here, and I have so many questions. I'm like, I want to like go off script before I ask my next question. But like, you know, that right there is hugely important. Thinking about literally stopping yourself to do, like, before you do anything, but especially when you think about like, why am I putting on the makeup? Why am I wearing the specific clothes? And really asking yourself, is it for me? And if it's for me, what does that even mean? Being willing, like you said, to ask the layers and say, okay, well, if it's for me, well, why? Well, it makes me feel beautiful. Well, why? Is it because I'm enhancing how I'm feeling? Or is it because I'm covering up that I actually, part of me doesn't feel like enough? And why? And now this sounds like it's a lot in the moment when you're just getting ready for your day. But if you can slow down enough, and that's the power of, I think, like sensuality, the art of slowing down in everything that we do. And now that's a whole other conversation. But being willing to ask yourself the questions because you know you deserve to. You know, it took me a while to be willing to wear lipstick, because for a long, like, that's just one example, but for a long time I was afraid to be heard. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be out there, and I felt like lipstick was so loud. So you wouldn't find me wearing this stuff forever ago, and all of a sudden I tapped into, I want to try it out. And then I felt like I started expressing myself better and more bold, and I liked that, and I was like, oh, this is for me. And so, like, for example, like when I'm with my boyfriend, I literally tell him, like, I will not really kiss you today, so just deal with it. This is for me, damn. But no, but I think it's important to ask yourself these questions. And I do want to take it back a second too. And I think it's really interesting. The word celibacy that you brought up. I just, something that came up for me as you were talking is how interesting of a word I think that is, because it can be triggering for a lot of people. It can get people thinking in a lot of different directions, but it is a word that I think is, weirdly enough, rare. Like, I don't think you hear it enough. And that just shows how normal sex is. So many people just, you know, it's just life. You know, there's this innate things with drive and stuff within us to just do that. And so it should be normalized, right? And just a normal part of just being a human, and then tapping into, okay, well, what do I want out of this? Like, what's the purpose of this? How do I make this better and just create more and more joy in this area? And then when you do that, it brings more joy into life. So that was just kind of something I kind of took away from that. And I want to dive into a little bit and then we'll move on. But your year and a half of celibacy, because that's something that a lot of people don't do. What was like I know you shared a little bit, but was there like a key takeaway that you like, what was the key takeaway you learned in that experience about yourself and your body?
So then 2 years ago, I had then for a little while dived into the self-pleasure modality, which is one of the ways I've certified as a sex coach. And it's a long dive where we're doing like self-pleasure, lots of self-pleasure for 6 months. And I was feeling so much sexual energy in my body. And I felt frustration because at the time I didn't have a lover and I wasn't dating anyone and etc. And we're just like feeling a lot of frustration, like all this sexual energy. And then I just realized, well, this is my life force energy. And I don't need to dispel it. Like I don't need to send it away. I don't need to send it to someone else. Like I can just enjoy. This is just energy. And that's again the gift of then it was like 3 months of being in practicing self-pleasure so much. And self-pleasure actually teaches you to hold more energy in your body. Because so it's about like when you're 30 minutes with yourself, like either genitally touch before, and like the thing is you're not going to then orgasm, like you're going to be with your body and sexually arouse it, or you're just going to be with any kind of emotion. And that is teaching yourself to just be stronger and stronger in how much tension and like how much energy you can hold in your vessel, in your body. And so through there, I just suddenly realized I don't need to have, like I don't need to send it out. I can just keep it more in. And then it was a few months after that where like when I was having then lovers or dating and etc., I just discovered that I'm not building up the energy in these interactions. It's a little bit of, I just feel like there's something more, like much more. So I just decided that I'm going to explore this by myself, like not sending my energy to someone else, and just explore what is it like my body is craving to feeling. And I don't know if I'm answering, but it just comes up as the sharing.
Yeah.
And as I started, like in the beginning, I was just thinking 6 months. And then I just started feeling like, wow, I'm just really enjoying the orgasm just went more and more beyond mind-blowing. And what's also started to happen is that the orgasms didn't go from like a peak up. It just like got up and then it just could last and without having that downfall. And that kind of energy, of course, like feeling my body excited, like my creativity, what I was creating both in jewelry and in my business, my coaching business, was just beyond. So it's a little bit like just channeling this energy in my body and keeping it and then just playing with it rather than having, yeah, like I adore sex. So I'm happy to be back with sex now. But I also know that maybe I'll be choose celibacy for a while again. So it's a little bit of, yeah, the pleasure is I don't need anyone. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I love this idea of like your sacred energy, right? Like this is like there's something very special about the energy that I mean, every single person in the universe has, right? Like we've got to honor that everybody has energy, but really honoring your energy and realizing that sometimes you just don't want to share it. Sometimes you want to like really just embrace that within yourself and just explore it and allow yourself to maybe anybody that's watching or going to catch the replay can really dive into that. Like, how do I want to like connect with myself differently? How do I want to allow myself to linger more in that? And if so, like, am I willing to go there? Just like kind of just seeing like stretching your box, I would say. And I don't mean in that way. I just mean like stretching the comfortability of your like, your bubble and your container of who you are and your energy goes. But yeah, I love that you brought that up. And I would love to touch on you mentioned the sensual shadow side, or the shadow side of sensuality. Can you explain that a little bit further? Because you were diving into it, but really at the heart of it, what is that?
Well, for me, sensual shadow is really what is keeping us from being deeply in tune with our bodies. So for me, sensitivity and sensuality is the same thing. It's being alive in your body and feeling what's going on. And the more we feel what's going on in our bodies, the quicker and quicker we can feel everything from who's a good sex partner to who's a good partner to who's a good friend to what will be a good business opportunity to even the things like what does my feminine feel like wearing today, like just it's like these kind of, the more sensitive we are, the more these kind of things we just feel like bubbling up very quickly. And it also actually supports in, for instance, when it comes to anger and frustration and these things, because you will feel it. Like rather than waiting until maybe you dropped over and you are angry, you actually start to feel earlier and earlier in your body this is bubbling up, meaning that giving you the opportunity so much quicker to say to someone that I'm not comfortable with this, but you're still in that situation where you can just completely talk from a calm point rather than just being, I'm not okay with this. Yeah. So it's so empowering. It's so empowering.
Yeah.
It's also challenging because we do live in a world that has trampled and suppressed the feminine as in the emotions. So it's a little bit of, it's both, because you do get literally more sensitive, meaning that people that you before could handle, suddenly now you're just like, your whole body's just screaming, no, 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 get out of there.
Well, it shows that when I kind of get the sense that it's diving into like your intuition and really building a relationship with that and being willing to hear what the data it's giving you or what it's telling you, the communication, whether it's something you want to hear or not, and being willing to embrace whatever comes up and then trust that it's right. So, but I imagine, and I know from my own experience and my work with my clients and everything, that when you do that, when you start to connect deeper and you go into that alignment, there's a lot of stuff that comes up to the surface. And it's a lot of like stuff you don't want to deal with, right? It's like limiting beliefs, blocks and stuff. So I'm wondering what you maybe share with your clients or tips you can give us today on when that stuff's coming up, when you're doing the work, how do you kind of transmute those blocks and beliefs that are coming up to just embrace what it has to say?
Mm. Well, the easy question, which is the most difficult thing to do, is actually acceptance, which you just said. It's a little bit of, because anything we're trying to fix, like I do not want to feel this way, is actually creating a shadow. So a shadow is basically yourself trying to control and make you into something that you're not. Either by I want to be this or I don't want to be that. Actually, both are equal creating shadows when you think about it, becoming who you actually are, who your blueprint is.
Mm.
So one of the ways, though, one can transmute this shadow is through self-pleasure again. It's, oh, I'm feeling these things happening in my body. And then either using music as a backdrop or without, just starting to explore what is alive in my body using sound, breath, touch, and movement. And just start to and it's not about dancing to the rhythm. The music, if it's there, is just a backdrop. So it's just about like starting to be aware. And you don't have to have music, but it's a tool. So for instance, if you're in a place where you can't do it, you can still just go in within and just feel and just acknowledge, like for instance now, I'm feeling some activations in my belly. I don't know completely how to pronounce it, but like when I'm feeling it, it goes down to underneath the soles of my feet. And as I say that, I notice a sensation here.
Mm.
And so it's actually just acknowledging, but when you do it with yourself, try not to put words, like try to just be with what's happening without necessarily putting, I'm feeling anger, I'm feeling frustration. Like, how can we drop the labels and just be with this? I'm going to say like maybe how we can feel when we are feeling a strong emotion and someone's there for us, like our partner, a friend or something. We just want to be able to just express, you know. And when we're expressing, we don't want anyone to just tell us, oh, you're feeling that now, or you should do that. So it's a little bit just allowing this inside of ourselves to just feel. So if you feel fucking furious, I'm sorry for the language, but if
Oh,
you feel fucking furious, you know, just you know, just feel it instead of trying to fix it, because actually anger turns into passion when it's allowed to be there. And it's really important to distinguish between the pure sensation of anger, angry thoughts, and angry actions. And the more sensitive, for instance, we become, the more we can just hold the energy of anger within without there being angry thoughts or angry actions. It takes practice though. So
yeah. That's beautiful, because that just shows, like you said, it is practice. It's something that over time just becomes easier and easier to just be as your natural way, have as your natural way of being, you know? So, and I think it's powerful to, just like what you said, like keep in mind, like the judgment is so not necessary of being perfect with anything, or perfect, or being like really getting it. Like you're gonna start slow, right? Because the emotion, like what I'm kind of a little bit scattered right now, but what's coming to mind is like when you were saying like anger turns into passion, that just shows like you don't have to view either one as good or bad, because anger and passion sit on the same scale, just on opposite sides. So by embracing one, you are embracing the other to come in, but just allowing it to evolve over time. So just really just, I think just like you said, I really love the idea of maybe at first, if you need to call out what's happening, saying, okay, well, I'm feeling the sensation here, it's moving over here, just to build that connection. But over time, allowing it to just be a silent activity that you really just take in and connect with your body. But I think that's really powerful, to just start building that brain body connection, feeling the energy shift around. And I know that maybe some people might feel like, oh my God, that feels too woo woo, I don't know about that. But before you just write it off, you know what I mean? Like give things a try. And I want to talk about this. Oh, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, I just want to share because I'm coming from a point where I used to have a lot of depressions. I used to have autoimmune problems with a lot of pain in my body. So I can speak into how transformative it is when you start to listen to what's happening in the body, because it actually, pain and depressions and these things is actually our body that's just trying to get our attention. It's just speaking louder and louder and louder. Something isn't okay. You have to listen, you know. And then we keep taking that. They're so sadly natural in society to just take pain medication and take these things and trying to just ignore it or fix it. But the thing is that it's the body, it's your feminine part that's just saying, please listen to me. This isn't good. So that's the power of, for instance, anything from just, for instance, if I'm in a cafe waiting for something, I start to feel something in my body, I just move. Like I just move my hips a little bit and I just stay with it. And before that would feel like, so I can't do that. But now no one is noticing because it's so natural for me. So it's a little bit of just, I'm putting myself first. So that's another example of something like small you can do by putting yourself first. And I want to go back though, if it's okay, to say that I don't see any emotion as negative and I don't see any emotion as positive, because happiness can also be a way of actually hiding something is underneath. It can be numbing what's alive. And again, anger, anger, first of all, let's say if you're about to be attacked, feeling anger is actually what's going to support you to escape. And anger is also the reason why people go out and do things in the world. Like I've been feeling so much anger for the shaming around sexuality in our bodies. And when I just allow that to be there, that's the passion. That's bringing me to that point where I'm just putting all these things online and I'm not caring, because my passion, like I'm more passionate about creating the change than the potential shaming or problems around it. And so for me, I see that every emotion simply has a shadow aspect or a gift aspect. And the more we just embrace all emotions, the more they also naturally bring you the gift. But when we suppress it, what's happened is that, so for instance, if one is suppressing anger or is suppressing frustration or sadness, it actually just gets down to your body and locks a little bit in your body, and that is what pain is. So pain in the body is actually emotions you suppressed, because emotion is pure energy. So it just goes into like a block in the body. But what also happens is it just stored there. So the next time you experience something where this emotion that you consider as forbidden is coming up, that other, it's like an archive, you know? So the other things you also have suppressed would just build up in addition to what you're feeling now. So it would just build up more and more. And that's why, for instance, then one also can just suddenly get like a very irrational reaction to situations. So it's build up of this that we haven't allowed ourselves, they're just flooding our system. So by just allowing more and more emotions, what naturally happens is that one turns into going from reactivity, which is like lashing out, saying something we didn't mean, and etc., which is what most people think of as anger, but it's just that's angry action. And the more and more it gets to be about just acknowledging that, oh, there's something here that isn't okay for me, and then take action. So the difference is reaction and action.
I love this, and I'm so glad you brought up this point, because like there's a lot of power in what we've been talking about, right? And how really just understanding your body, connecting with that can be so powerful, but also acknowledging that when we're like suppressing things down and, like you said, like acting irrationally and stuff, it's just a misunderstanding of the data coming up. And so when we can just start, like, that's why everything we've talked about already is so important, so that you can understand that information and not judge the emotion coming up and make your situation that much worse, right? Just embracing it, having a different conversation with yourself, and then allowing it to move through. So like you said, it doesn't get stuck. It doesn't keep you in that place of just that ongoing loop that you just can't get out of. So I think what you've just shared is super powerful. And yeah, and I think of any time I've done anything in my own life where it's felt like, wow, I made a big leap, or I made a big change, or I'm so proud of that accomplishment, is it was fueled by the pain of where I was at. And that pain was in a few different areas, right? It wasn't just emotions, it was a lot of things. The pain of where I was at became worse. It became worse than going into the unknown. And I was like, at this point, waving my hands, I was like, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to go for it. And that pain fueled empowerment. It fueled the big changes that I made. And I think a lot of people can say the same thing. And it doesn't always have to be a pain that drives it. Sometimes it can be like, oh, like this group, for example, I was so excited and passionate. I was like, I don't even know where the fuck this is going to go, but I'm so excited about this. And I get to chat with women who light me up and are doing big things. Like, I'm going to move towards that. So I love the idea of just embracing the emotions so fully. And if it's something that feels undesirable, ask yourself why. And ask yourself, what is it there to teach you and show you, and allow the conversation to change. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's beautiful, and I agree. And I wanted to talk about this topic that I just saw, like, you mentioned it somewhere. I don't remember if it was like on a link or a post you shared, but there was something about this topic of beautiful healing. And initially I was like, oh, I love that. But I was like, I kind of want to dive deeper into what you mean, because those two words right there are kind of this juxtaposition of two complete, almost different energies, where beautiful is like this energy of light and airy. But then healing, it almost can be this association of survival, overcoming pain, resistance, pushing through to, like, you've gone through a lot, so it's like, I'm curious on your idea of those words together, or kind of your practice there. Is that really that embracing of the masculine and feminine energies, creating that harmony, or was there something deeper on that?
Yeah, and it's two things. And I just have to say, I'm just so impressed with you. It's like every time you're saying something, I just love it. So thank you for your wisdom. Um, so for me, it's beautiful because every time I'm healing by accepting something, I'm feeling this blooming inside. And that's why I have wildflower. It's like wild and flowers, like, you have the blooming of the wildflower. And the wildflower is just growing wherever it wants to, you know, it doesn't care where it, you know, you put up these beds they're supposed to stay in, but it doesn't care. So for me, the beautiful healing is just to allow yourself to just bloom and just be whoever you're meant to be. That is really what, and I actually even see it as a beautiful destruction. So for me, healing is a beautiful destruction because it's destroying the things that isn't aligned for you. It's taking away the things that just that is keeping you small, that's keeping you inside of a little box. And when I say destruction, that's again on purpose, because we are actually, when we're doing healing, parts of our life, even huge parts of our lives, actually do get destroyed. And everything that's destroyed is because it's not good for us. It's exactly the reasons why we were not feeling good. But the thing is that we tend to get used to like pain and numbness and being around people that maybe are not totally accepting us. Like we get used to this and we settle, we just get into this victim pattern of just survive, like, no, but I don't have anyone else, I'm just gonna, you know, keep connecting with this person because I, like, you know, I just don't want to be alone. So this, everything that is keeping us in survival mechanism will be destroyed. And that is beautiful and creates healing, because we step into, like, just when I'm sitting here now, like what I'm feeling in my body is just so amazing. And what have I done the past years? You know, I destroyed my Norwegian life in terms of, I sold my apartment there, I closed down my jewelry store, and I am building something here in Mexico. I'm building a house here in Mexico, like a retreat house. So, you know, it's like I'm creating all this amazing stuff, and I just now been here for it's 2 months, and I have another month before I go back to Norway a little bit. I'm just walking around and I'm just like in awe. This is my life. It gets to be my life. And I want to go back to Norway, because in Norway I'm also going to do like lots of workshops and like exploring, and there's so much fun waiting for me. So it's
That,
yeah.
oh my gosh, so really quick, something I don't like talk a lot openly about, but I'm a bit of an intuitive as well. And so when people, especially when people are talking about the things that they like, when somebody's like, for example, when somebody's going through like a crossroads and they don't know which path to go, I'll sit there and listen. I'll be like, hey, talk about one thing. And then if my body literally does nothing, I'm like, okay, well, tell me about this other thing. And then we finally get to the thing, and it's like my body just starts tingling and lighting up. I'm like, okay, let's keep moving in that direction. I'm talking about it. And I just want you to know, my body literally just went off and did that when you were talking about this house, this retreat house. So I'm excited to see what this is for you. It sounds like you're following your bliss and your alignment. So I love that. But yeah, the space that you're in, what I really want to emphasize to anybody tuning into this is that you are in what I like to call the opportunity space. You are sitting here on the, oh my gosh, the excitement, like, I wonder what I could create. You're leading with curiosity and allowing that to just expand and grow, and look what it's forming, right? You're like willing to shed your old life, which so many people will not do because they're so afraid. But there's this concept that I want to talk about. And now I'm still kind of learning how to wrap my words around this, but there's a concept around like the sunken cost of something, where you've gone so far deep down that it's costing you so much happiness, it's costing you your life, but yet you're so far down you don't know how to get out, and so you just say, okay, well, I'm here. Versus the opportunity cost of being willing to start new, start over, not knowing what that's going to provide for you, but saying, I trust that there is the cost of this is going to actually cost, it's going to cost. See, this is where the words kind of kind of lose me for a second, but you hear what I'm saying. It's like being willing to weigh the costs of things and say, okay, well, I'm so far down in something that I know is not serving me, it doesn't feel good, and the cost of that is too much, versus the cost of the opportunity space, it's so much less because it feels aligned, it feels good. And sometimes just feeling that and trusting that that's enough will be the thing that leads you into, you know, the abundance. And you're in that abundance space right now, right? So I'm hoping that made sense for anybody. That's something I've been really diving into in my own world, is like weighing things out. That's usually that's literally what I'm using right now to determine my forward is what's the opportunity cost, and trusting that the sunken cost doesn't need to play a factor in that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, beautiful. I see it as I studied in economy, so I also can see it like your production cost. It's a little bit like when you're in a situation that you know that you're unhappy with, the production cost of maintaining that is just going to be more and more and more. So
Yes.
it's a little bit of and another word can just be cutting your losses. Like we tend to just be, oh, I invested all this money in this, so I can't get out. But it's like, okay, but what is it going to cost me to stay put? Like, what is it going to cost on my health and my happiness? And what's in a year, how is it really going to look? Is it actually going to get any better? So I understand what you're saying, but it's a beautiful concept. I'm sure it is going to keep playing out in my mind. I got
Yeah.
some graphs in my mind as you were sharing.
Yeah, that's exactly how I meant to explain it. But really, like, just I think another thing too is like knowing when you're out of alignment and when you're not. And the more you're out of alignment and you're going against yourself, it's going to just be the most resistance filled place ever. I was actually just talking to a friend about how like both of us had like moved, and when we moved cities, even that was one example we were talking about. And everybody that we know that has stayed comfortable in their own city and just didn't explore, literally pretty much every single person, with the exception of maybe a couple of people because they are in alignment, they're literally every single time I talk to them, it's like they're going through this shit, they're going through this shit, and life is hard and they're miserable. And it's like, if you would just allow yourself to get out of that sunken cost and you would allow yourself to jump into the possibilities of what's more for you, like your life would actually start to flow and life would be less of an uphill battle for you.
Yeah,
So it's so worth being willing sometimes to say, this isn't serving me anymore. Yes, I've committed, like, and this is where people stay in relationships too long, stay at jobs they hate too long. It's like they're so comfortable in their misery that they
yeah,
just stay there. And that is honestly, I'm so passionate. And that's why I'm going on and on about this, is because that is the root of literally so much unhappiness. And that is like my mission, is to get
yeah,
people out of that, because the moment I got myself out of that, life changed and was never the same for the better. So
yeah,
I love that
yeah,
I can feel that you're doing that too, following your
yeah,
bliss. Ah,
yeah. And I so share your passion around that subject. So it's why I actually use a lot of mindset rewiring
mhm.
when I guide people. And that is actually supporting the masculine brain that just wants to continue, is very much like goal oriented and structure, to be on. We like to say yes to being more in the flow. But this is also connected to the fact that our brain is in a lot of ways still the same as when we were cavemen. And that means that our survival instinct is so strong. So, and the ego mind would think that if I keep choosing the same, I'm going to survive, because the ego mind doesn't care about happiness. It just wants you to survive. And by this, like, the ego is beautiful. So I'm actually not one of the persons that wants to kill the ego, but it's about maturing the ego. It's about growing it from a small e to a big E, like small ego to a big ego, in terms of working for us. So for me, it's like, thank you, ego, for wanting to keep me safe. Uh, and I want something more. Like I want to feel more good in my body. I want to feel more happiness in my life. So, but this is a long journey, so I'm not going to get into that. But that's why I would just want to get back. I see this in connection to what you were talking about, the inner union, that I didn't answer actually a little bit before. It's about getting your masculine and your feminine to work together. Because what we have in the world is that inside world is reflected in the outside world and the other way around. So what we tend to have is this push-pull, where our rational side is fighting with the intuitive side, or like the emotional side. So when we can start to have more honoring and listening to both of them, like, we're not putting away our ego, we're not putting away our rational mind, we're not gonna only listen to our emotions. We are a whole complete being. And how can we honor all parts of us? Being like, thank you for this part. Like, you can think of like aspecting different parts of us. Thank you for the input. And we as a whole is going to feel into what is aligned for us.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
it's,
that
yeah.
just clicked a little bit different for me too. It's like, like yes, we can sit here and be like, oh, like staying stuck is like it's gonna not allow you to live in that alignment and stuff. But like to be able to get out of the stuck place, we've got to just embrace that it was serving us. It's
Mm,
and it was just wants to keep us safe. We don't need to judge ourselves and be angry at ourselves for where we
mm,
are, but just know, like, if you're wanting more, if you're feeling called for more, you just embrace first, you accept fully, and then you say, okay, now how do we move? And then that
mm,
movement, yes, that's like the masculine, but the feminine is like, okay, well, let me listen first, let me receive, and then I'm going to listen, and then I'm going to move. And so
mm.
flowing with that leads you to the next steps, to getting out from from feeling stuck, to move in those new ways. So yeah, I really love that you brought it back, to yeah, let's embrace all of it to
Mm.
create the next level. And yeah, so my last couple, oh, and did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so for me, it's about, there's a lot of discussions around this, but for me, it's about giving my masculine, like having my inner masculine supporting my feminine. So it's about when I have a desire, then my masculine gets to be, how can we create this? Like it supports me, my own inner masculine supports me in the guidance of how to create what I want. So that's a way of having them move together. It's a little bit of, I got something, but I lost it. Anyway, let's just.
There's so much already in that. So yeah, I would love to know, because I imagine, as everybody's does, but your work has shifted over time, right? Like shifted through like the offerings you provide and the way that you approach your clients and your work. So I would love to know what inspires your work now. Like kind of what space are you living in?
Good question. What inspires me is to people to find their own power. Because I'm going to be honest with the fact that I see a lot of the same mindsets in the spiritual world and the coaching world as I see in the capitalistic system. It's a lot about really just using shame and guilt for people to just really buy something in order to think that if you follow this recipe, you will find happiness. So what is really like, what is I so crave is to support people in connecting with their intuition, because intuition is so fast. Intuition will know how to jump from A to Z. Like it just intuitively know, where the rational mind needs to go from A to B to C. It needs to be so kind of, it's very slow. It needs to be so rational. And the beautiful, when you start to listen more and more to yourself and you make these leaps, like trusting yourself, you start to also be able to just listen to yourself. So even though someone is saying something that you feel is right, and you see they have this amazing life, you can still feel like, oh, really great. Like this is working for you, fantastic. And for me, this isn't aligned. So for me, it's about getting really self-empowerment, like getting back people's own power to choose what is right for them.
Hmm.
And in that also, without making the other choices wrong, it's simply that it isn't aligned for them or for me, or it's aligned for them and it isn't for me.
Yeah.
And through this, we start to have a world where everyone gets to be unique and everyone is an expert in their own field. And when you have that, you don't have competition anymore. It just, society is just going to totally transform when we trust ourselves. And trusting ourselves also start to gradually more and more letting go of this measuring stick of I'm not enough or I'm too much. So it's a little bit of how can we break that stick and just be like, well, I'm me, I'm only me. And that's another thing I can add, that it was a bit vulnerable getting back into dating after a year and a half not being. And I was noticing all these things coming out. It's like, I'm 42 now. What, like, I'm too old. Like, what, like, all these things were coming up. And I was just meeting myself with this just gentleness and just letting it be there. And so quickly, it just melted away, like super, it just melted away in a matter of seconds when they're coming up. And I just left with this super empowerment, but I'm me. Like, I have this unique frequency. And so does anyone else. So I'm not competing with anyone
Yeah.
because no one can be me. And if someone wants someone else, that's because they want that. But that has nothing to do with my worth or my value.
Yeah. Oh, I have to tell you, this is me being just real honest. Everything you just said, I almost feel like it just put this like calm. I just got like a calm rushed over me
Mm.
because I think as a coach, and I'm shifting gears a little bit here, but like as a coach, we're passionate about what we do because we know how much people are in their own way. And the moment people can just like release that control and just say yes to themselves in a different way, like their lives can change. But I also know like sometimes we're at a little bit different place in our evolution than other people. And so it's like that right there almost just made me realize like in order to help people you have to meet them, like I know this, but like meeting people where they're at, and instead of being like angry for people not wanting to change or not getting themselves unstuck, it's like no, just embrace people where they're at, embrace people where they're at, see that pain and say okay, let's acknowledge that, and then shifting. And so I just kind of got this like different, I don't know, something just hit me a little bit different of like
Mm.
anytime you feel fired up about things, it's like, well, just check yourself and ask why and where is this coming from and how can you approach it different. Yeah, so thank you for sharing everything you did. It really just, I think it brought a calm um that is, yeah, it's beautiful. So yeah, that beautiful healing, that work that you do. So I think you're in just the most beautiful aligned energy for yourself. I can tell, you in Mexico and everything. So what is next for you? What are you building right now? What are you creating that we can look forward to?
Yeah, so I have two courses that it's interesting because my rational side wanted me to publish this 3 weeks ago. And then I'm just seeing and sensing that there is so much coming through in me now. So if I would have created something and like put something on paper or like published 3 weeks ago, it would already have been different, like in a week and for sure now 3 weeks later. So what is two containers courses that is like online, and one of them is the healing of the masculine and feminine through having a mixed group. So it's about doing sensual shadow work around masculine and feminine energy in our mixed container, because I see how can we kind of remove this because I'm going to say natural anger that we have towards, for instance, as a female, towards males because of suppression that's been, and how can we kind of open that communication and through that start to let it go, because it's a little bit of what I'm seeing. Like recently it's been a lot of men that I've been working with, and they're just feeling all this sadness about what's been happening in the world, and they're carrying the guilt about things that they didn't technically change, like you create. So it's like how can we also like acknowledge what was, but also start something new without needing to drag the past along in such a the same way. And the third is that it's going to be my essential shadow work course, which is the third round. But first round was very different from the second, and this third is also going to be different. So that's two things that's coming out. And then, yeah, I'm feeling really called to do more in-person work. So that's also interesting, is that seeing how that is going to transform a lot, because with COVID, the 2 past years, I have almost not done that much in-person work. So it's really exciting to see what's kind of out there. And yeah, just planning and building the house here and how to get that going. And it's that is also really alive for me.
Yeah. Oh, well, beautiful. That's so exciting. I can't wait for you to release all of that and to bring those gifts into the world, because if there's anything I know, it's so needed right now. This work is so needed right now. And I know sometimes people in this space feel like, oh my gosh, well, do we need another coach? Do we need another healer? Do we need a blah, blah, blah? But there's so much available space for everybody. We need so much light in this world. So I'm so glad that you're to rise up and share your light and heal the world. So before I get to my very, very last question, where is the best place for us to connect with you on social or off social, wherever?
Yeah, well, I guess it's Instagram and Facebook. So if people here wants to, they could just add me if they want to. It's interesting because I've had a Facebook group, and it's really difficult for me because what I want to express is about sexuality. And with the censorship,
Mm,
it's not really easy. So let's see if I'm gonna rekindle my Facebook group. But for now, mainly it's really just my profile and Instagram.
yeah.
So mm,
Well, that's, I think, a beautiful place to get it all started. And this will live
mm,
in the Facebook group, so we're more than welcome to share it out, and start the conversation this way. But yeah, so grateful for you, so grateful to have you here. And my last question for you is just any words of wisdom that you want to leave us all with around, I don't know, just how you live your life, what you believe in, what you think the women could really use hearing right now.
mm. Well, it comes up as trust yourself, actually. It's just building kind of that inner trust. For me, that's, I wish I could have something more profound or different, but that is what my heart wanted to say, is building this trust with yourself. And how you build it is through prioritizing yourself, is through accepting what you're feeling, is through having this softness for yourself.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I think that the best advice sometimes is the most simple. It's the most simple because you think about like overcomplicated advice. Well, what do we do with that? We break it down so we can understand.
Mm.
So this is the root of it all. So I think that's amazing. And I needed to hear that message too. So I'm super grateful.
Thank you. It's been such an honor. And yeah, you have so much wisdom. It's so beautiful to talk to you. This is giving me so much, really. I feel a lot of great gratitude and joy.
So mutual. I can't even tell you. It is so mutual. So thank you so, so much again for being on, for everybody that joined us today. And yeah, this will be in the group. Also, your links are posted below and post right below this in the group. So if you want to connect with Marta, please feel free to connect with her one-on-one. But otherwise, we will be back next week for our next goddess sessions. But thank you so much again for everything, your
Thank you.
energy, your spirit, your wisdom, everything. Truly, truly grateful.
Mm. I want to add that the easiest way to connect with me is to drop the question in the group because I'm in the group. So actually, that's the easiest way.
Oh, that's I for sure. You got for
Yeah,
here.
I'm looking forward to your rest of your conversations. I'm definitely going to follow them.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
loves. Well, we will talk soon.